that. Okay. All right. So we've prayed. For those of you that are joining us by recording, we're going to just do a little bit of introduction to the class today. As I was just telling the class, our librarian, Jennifer Roman, her father died this morning, so we aren't able to have Jennifer with us this morning, and so are we just praying for her too, Father, that you would just watch over her and her family, and our prayers are with Jennifer today. And she just is a wonderful librarian and just is a great resource person. And you can contact her by email. And I think you can get into the library from the Populi site here. And if you've not done that, I will go ahead and just show a few things on that, but we won't be able to have a full presentation today on the library. We'd like to just introduce ourselves. I am Dr. Bill Payne. I'm the Director of Final Projects, Doctoral Final Projects here at BGU. Been with the school for, my goodness, it's been over 25 years now. We started the school back in 1990, and I was a part of that launch team at that time. And so we've seen a lot of history over that 25-year period. So it's just good to be part of you all. Dr. Henry, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Dr. Claire Henry, and I'm resident in New York City. I've started working with Bakke from last March when I was part of a team to work on developing the Women in Leadership track. Currently, I'm teaching a course, Mentoring Women in the Professions, Emerging Theories, and I've just completed teaching the course, Servant Leadership. My background is basically education, and my doctoral work is in adult and continuing education administration. Mm-hmm. So okay. That is a brief synopsis of who I am.
Very good. And Noah, why don't you go ahead and just formally introduce yourself for the camera and for all of us here online.
Okay. Good morning. It's afternoon here where I'm in Guyana. And I'm Noel Holder. I'm a pastor. I pastor 2 congregations. I'm also a lecturer and head of department at the University of Guyana. My specialty is in public health, and so I have lots of public health concerns, things that I can deal with and some that I cannot deal with. And I'm hoping that this course will help me to factor in the necessary skill that I can be able to make that presentation towards the journey that I am planning to embark on.
Okay, very good. Great. We all have varied backgrounds, and so when we come together in these kinds of online courses, we really just ask that we all speak from our own backgrounds, because we all have various expertise, and it's very helpful when we bring our joint knowledge together when we're working with dissertations and various topics that different students will be utilizing here. So there should, like I say, there should be at least 3 other students that will be part of the class, I hope, unless something else has happened, and then we'll have to do some rethinking. But again, this is the first Zoom room, so we will be doing a Zoom room each week. We are asked to do that now based on our accreditation. The online courses, we need to have some kind of face-to-face time each week, just to fulfill some of those accreditation requirements. So we will be having a Zoom room each week, and I'll just use this time slot, unless there's any other times that are more convenient. I'm not sure. Is this a time slot that's convenient for both of you?
Yes, it is.
You know.
Well, for now, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I was talking to one other student, Ryan Nash. He's in San Francisco, California. He's actually works at another secular job, and he was saying that kind of falls right in the middle of his work day. So he was hoping, normally he thought he could get off at this time, but his boss from out of town, I guess, who's a joint regional person, was in the office this day, so he was not sure he could just jump into the Zoom room. The other option would be to go a little later in the day, but I don't want to, since you folks are both on the Eastern time, you know, I'm here on the West Coast of the United States, and I'm in Pacific time. So we started at 10:30 here, 1:30 over there. You know, the other option would be is if we wanted to start later, you know, wanted to start like, you know, 4:30 Eastern time, but I'm not sure how that would fit both of your schedules.
Well, 4:30 because 4:30 is actually after work. I'm muted. Let me come off my mute. Yes, 4:30 is actually after my work time.
That's after your work day.
After finish.
How would that fit your schedule, Dr. Henry?
I could meet 4:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put out an email to the class. That would be a little more convenient, especially for those of you who are working in other job situations that, you know, you're in kind of a schedule. So anyway, but we will see how that schedule works out.
Okay.
Let's just spend a little time on some introductory comments here. I've got two PowerPoint slides I just kind of want to go over. I just want to make sure we know how to get into the library. And then I've asked Dr. Henry to make a few comments on what we call a theoretical framework, and maybe a little bit on evaluating courses. That's what this week is really devoted to looking for some sources that will relate to your particular dissertation topic. And so we want to focus in on that issue. So let me again share my screen here. Let's see if that does it. Okay, are you seeing a PowerPoint slide there?
Yes.
Okay. What I wanted to do, I wanted to share this screen because I can go to some other screens as we need it. But let's just do some introductory thoughts here. There was some pre-reading for this course. One was called The Craft of Research by Wayne Booth. And you know, that particular little book, it just has a lot of good little pieces of information on just some of the different aspects of writing all various kinds of research papers. They have sections on evaluating sources also. Put an article online that Dr. Henry gave me on reviewing sources. So Craft of Research has some thoughts on that issue too, that I just asked students to go back and review those chapters. There was another book that was a pre-course reading called The Diffusion of Innovation that we've used in this course for the last few years. That particular book is just on an analysis of how new ideas and programs are introduced into a particular society. And so some have found that book helpful just as they are thinking about introducing programs into a community, whatever it is they may be doing. And so I've left that book on the required reading list for now, just to give students exposure to some of that kind of analysis that has been done on how new ideas, new programs are introduced into context. And so as you're working on a dissertation, a final project, that will very well probably be something you'll be doing. You may be doing some new program work in an organization, in a community, within a culture. That would be part of your work as you're doing a final project. You're also going to have weekly reading. We have 3 textbooks that we're really focusing on in this, for this term. Research Design, Qualitative, Quantitative, and Mixed Methods by John Cresswell. John Cresswell is kind of one of the people that have been around quite a long time in the area of research. But he has a very general book that kind of gives a survey on the 3 main types of research: qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods. So you can just take a look at that book. I'm assigning some reading from various chapters that relate to our assignments each week. 2 other books on qualitative research. Qualitative Research, A Guide to Design and Implementation by Sharon Miriam. I've appreciated her book. I feel it's a very readable book, and she really focuses on the quality approach. At least since I've been teaching this course for the last several years, I've encouraged students to use the qualitative approach because I feel like it lends itself to the kind of work that we're doing. That doesn't mean we won't also have places where the quantitative approach may be useful. And Dr. Henry, that's quite a bit in her background, and I'm hoping that she'll probably maybe to bring even some good ideas on how some quantitative approaches would also be helpful in the kinds of projects that we do here at BU. So Qualitative Research, A Guide to Design and Implementation by Sharon Miriam. And then another book with the same title in it, Qualitative Research, this was called A Multi-Method Approach by Tim Sensing. And Tim has written his book specifically for people who are writing DMin or DTL kinds of professional degrees. And so I find it kind of a helpful book that lends itself to specifically at least the 2 degree programs we have right now. We are starting a 3rd doctoral program, which will be the PhD, which actually Dr. Henry will be leading up, which will be even a more research-oriented degree. But here at BGU, we will always be focusing on being practitioners within the various contexts that the Lord has put us. So there again, it's not an either or having good research skills or good practitioner skills. It's having both of those skill sets in order to do what the Lord calls us to do in various parts of the world. A couple of articles this week that I've put there in the file on week 1. One, how to read a research article. This is an article that Dr. Henry just gave, but I thought it was very good. It's just kind of a quick article you can read, just kind of helpful in terms of evaluating sources. And I've asked Dr. Henry just to speak to that issue a little bit more here in a minute. There's another article there that our academic dean, Martina Adio, had just put into the area on critical thinking. Again, it's a very short article, 2 or 3 pages, but it's on the use of questions and how we function as critical thinkers. And the use of good questions is very essential as we're learning to think critically about any particular issue. And so I think just a good little quick article on the use of questions in regards to critical thinking. In terms of critical thinking, and we're going to spend a little more time on the whole topic of critical thinking in a few weeks, the little book, Craft of Research, is very good, I think. It's very simple on putting together what we call academic arguments, stating your premise, giving supporting evidence, drawing a conclusion, possibly bringing in opposing arguments. Sometimes, we don't always think and write with that kind of systematic quality. And so I think that's one of the skill sets that if a person doesn't already have those skill sets coming into this course, I'm hoping that we'll be exposed to writing in a little more academic manner, which is very different for those of us who have been, maybe accustomed to writing sermons or news briefs or whatever it might be. Like I tell students, dissertation writing is a very systematic type of exercise that's difficult because usually when you come into a course like this, you've never really written at that level. So we're going to try to think critically and try to help each other think critically as we are writing on any particular topic. Okay. So again, that little article on critical thinking I would bring your attention to. It's under the files area there on week 1. There's another little article called 22 Tips for the Tech Reader that our technical reader put together. And that's just kind of some of the common writing errors that we all find in just some of the mechanics of writing in the dissertation. And that particular article I put over there on the files on the info page. What I might do is take some of these articles and I may put them all over on that info page so you can actually get to those a little easier rather than putting them in just the different weeks. Sometimes you have to go search through the weeks to figure out where was that article. So I think I'll go ahead and put all the articles on that general info page, because then you can always go back and find those. I'm going to participate in a weekly discussions, okay? And since I think we're only going to have only 3 or 4 people in this class, we'll probably just have one discussion group. Sometimes when we've had, 15 or 20, we break it up into smaller groups, but I think we can handle it just, four of you in one discussion group. What we'll try to do is just, there are topics, discussion questions that relate to the reading and often to the part of the proposal that we're working on that particular week. Dr. Henry and I will be kind of looking at your comments there and trying to give you responses there. Like I said, participating in a weekly Zoom room. And again, we'll just try to verbalize some of the issues and kind of take your thoughts and questions so that we can talk about these issues together as we move through the course. We'll be writing a final project proposal. That's the outcome of this course. That will be due December 16th. We have it'll be a 3-chapter proposal: an introduction, the literature review, and the research methodology. And we'll be going through that. There's a template I'm going to be asking you to use as you pull that proposal together, and upload each week that template so that we can be taking a look at your work and giving you our feedback on what you do as you develop a problem statement and purpose statement and research questions and the research methodology and some of those various components that will be a part of that proposal. Once you finish that proposal for this course, and hopefully through this course, you will select a final project supervisor. When you finish the proposal and you get a grade and get any of our feedback, you would then give that proposal to your supervisor, who will possibly have some other recommendations. Once you and your supervisor work through that proposal and kind of refine it, and when it's at a point where it seems to be of satisfaction to both of you, then that proposal will be submitted to our academic cabinet. And those of us that are on the academic cabinet, we would look at that. Cabinet members often have a lot of good recommendations that would send back before you actually start into the actual writing, implementing the dissertation final project process. So that, so once the academic cabinet's approved that and given you recommendations, then you're moving through the dissertation final project process. So that's kind of a summary, I think, of what's happening. Any question on any of those issues at this point?
Just the question on the research supervisor.
Right.
Who finds such a person?
Any of our BGU faculty people can function as supervisors.
Okay.
So I think that's a good starting point. If there's been a particular faculty member that you appreciated working with, that would probably be a good choice. You can also choose someone who is not on the BGU faculty. The biggest issue there is that person may not always be familiar with our particular dissertation process, but it's fine. If there is someone that you feel really can very good assistance in working with you on a dissertation, somebody who has an earned doctorate, that's also perfectly acceptable for a supervisor who is outside of the faculty.
Okay. I wasn't thinking about somebody outside.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to go outside. I want to stay right inside.
Well, that'd be great. Yeah, actually, on what we'll call your dissertation committee, you'll have someone, a primary supervisor, and then there'll be a second reader, someone who will also be part of that group to give you feedback as you're going through that process.
Okay.
Let's see. We do want you to make sure that you use the final project proposal template, and that's really available on the info page. Okay. Yeah. What you do there, you can just open up that template, and you can start just typing. because it has generic headings, and all those headings are put in the right style. You know, all the right margins and everything have been done automatically in that template. So I really do ask students to use that template even during this course. For example, when you're going to work on, say, the problem statement, which is, you know, the first section of chapter 1, you open up the template and it'll say, you know, statement of the problem is the heading, and then underneath there's kind of some X's that are just kind of placeholders for the paragraph. If you just highlight, you know, those X's or whatever's there and start writing your paragraph, then it will just automatically be formatted in the correct template style.
Okay.
So, and then say for the second week, I think you would turn in a problem statement. If you just upload that whole template to the course on the assignment page, then we can look at that. And I like students to upload the template each time they turn in an assignment. That way, say when you're getting to the literature review chapter, I can look back at your problem statement. We can, now there's two of us, Dr. Henry and I can both we can kind of look back at the previous work, making sure the proposal is flowing nicely, that it's integrated well. So I always want to, each week that an assignment comes in, I really need to see that whole template so we can kind of just see how the whole proposal is progressing over the weeks.
Okay. Yeah.
People sometimes ask me, you know, how long should a proposal be? It's a little difficult to kind of narrow it down. You know, 30 to 45 pages is kind of what we're looking at right now. You know, if it goes over that a little bit, that's fine. Try to give you a little bit of, and I'll just put this I think this is on the info page also, just some of these suggested page links. Actually, that's the wrong. This is from my previous course. Over the last few months, we've actually changed the dissertation from a 7-chapter dissertation to a 5-chapter dissertation, which is taking the proposal to a 3-chapter. So this actually is wrong. I think I will redo this. What we've done now, we do have an introduction chapter, but that introduction chapter actually contains the context of the work, the problem statement, the purpose statement, the research questions, several issues. Then the second chapter of the new format will be the literature review. Within that literature review will be contained just samples of the various theoretical knowledge that you need to know in order to apply to the particular issue that you're addressing within the context where you're working. So the literature review, we decided the theological foundations are part of those, part of that theoretical information that you need to talk about. And so we've kind of integrated that into a chapter 2, which will be the literature review. Anyway, I'll put that out. So there'll be the introduction, there'll be the literature review, and then there'll be the research design, which will be chapter 3. So really you'll have a 3-chapter proposal, okay? You may still end up with maybe 30 to 45 pages in length, okay? But I'm sorry that I didn't get this slide changed, updated to the new format. All right, I think that's about it in terms of my introduction. And like I said, what I'm going to do in terms of the library skills, since Jennifer was not able to be with us today, I'm going to put, actually I'm going to put a couple things in the, on the course. And I think I'll load these into the info page, and I'll put out an email where these are at. Okay. Dr. Judy Melton put together a video on use of our library. That's part of now we have a whole orientation packet for BGU. Some of you who have been at the school for say more, not just recently, may have not seen that orientation packet. So I'm going to put that on the info page because there's just a lot of good information there on, you know, how to use the library, how to use EndNotes, how to use Zoom rooms, some tips on just using the whole populi. There's a lot of good information that Judy put together in that package. And our librarian, Jennifer Roman, she told me that they had just made she just made a video this last weekend, actually, on library skills. So she said she was going to give me the link to that particular video, and I will also post that since Jennifer is not going to be a part of our meeting. So I think with those two resources, I think that will give us what we need for using the library. I think, let me just see what I have here on my screen. I just, this is, go back here. This is the, the populi, when you go into populi. And when you first go into populi, there's just a little link up here called library. If you haven't been there before, you just click on that library link. It'll take you right over to our library. And then say I was trying to look something on for qualitative research. If I click that, it's going to tell me what we have in our library. Now, we happen to have a few of these online versions of a few of our textbooks, like qualitative research, a multi-method approach by sensing. There's actually an online available, and these will tell you there's an online resource available. So that's good. If you don't want the hard copy. One of our other textbooks here by Miriam, Qualitative Research. Now, this one, it does not have this available online. So there's not an online version of that book at this point in time. Probably if we go to that, let's see what that would take us to. Okay, it's going to take us to the Amazon summary of that book. When you're in the Amazon summary, you can get to the table of contents and things like that. But for that particular book, we don't really have an online version. Let's see what else we'd find here. Here's a qualitative research in sociology. There is an online version of that particular source. Doing qualitative. There's several here that have been added recently, I think, to our library. Very good that we have online versions of some of these books. Here's the book I just mentioned that is one of our textbooks, Research Design, Quantitative and Mixed Methods by Cresswell. This is probably an older version, but you can use that version if you want to. Basically, we've got these three different textbooks, the one by Miriam, the one by Sensing, the one by Cresswell. They all have a little different perspective on some of the different issues in research. So I just want you to be exposed to at least three different perspectives. And then they're similar in some ways. They emphasize various aspects of each of those, each part of those kinds of research methods. So that's really why we're using those three particular textbooks. But anyway, in the library, if you're looking for a topic, you can enter it here. You could also, let's see. No batches, okay. Trying to find. I'm going to have to look, links. It gets us under links. If you go to links in our library, you'll get to a couple of databases here that I really recommend people use. One is ProQuest, and again, ProQuest is a for-fee subscription database, but we do have access to it through our library. So when you go into it through the library, you're able to get in there. I think it will ask for your student ID, but you can experiment with these. And again, I think Jennifer will most likely go over how to use some of these databases on the videos. So that's one that's good. Google Scholar is also kind of coming into use, even in the academic communities. I also recommend that is Google Scholar. What's nice about both of those particular databases, when you look up a source, it will tell you how many, say from the academic standpoint, how many peer reviews how many people have actually used that article in their research? Sometimes you get a good idea about, some of the validity of an article, and Dr. Henry can talk about this in a minute. Just, if something is peer reviewed, that could be one of the criterion as you're judging a book. Anyway, you get all these databases under this main menu item called links. Okay, so catalog is when you go to catalog. That's where you can kind of enter a word, a topic, and it'll bring up books that we have in our library. It'll show books that we have online, and then it'll show other books that aren't necessarily in our library, but it'll give a summary of those books that we use. So those are the two main areas in the library, the catalog and the links. Even under the links, if you're going down here, you got endnotes, you got things on endnotes, you got introduction videos. Well, here's the BGU online library orientation. Okay, so there's actually an orientation video to our library right there. But just a lot of good work, a lot of resources here in this links area that I really would ask you to become familiar with as you are, especially now as you're getting involved in working on a dissertation. Okay. Any questions on that very short introduction to our library?
Not at the moment. It was just Saturday that I had some bit of exposure, and Jennifer was there. And then she had promised to send something out to us because I needed to understand a little bit more on the APA and the endnote, getting the reference to the page. That was giving me a problem. And she had promised to send something, and now they said about her father passing.
Okay, but Jennifer was able to help you at that point.
No, she should have sent that this week, so maybe she'll send it later on.
Yeah, this crisis in her own family maybe has affected that.
Yes.
Let me just kind of make sure that we're good on the lessons. I think the course is open now, and so each week, there's going to be a welcome. This is a welcome to the whole course. We're in week 1. And it will pretty much go with this format. There'll be a little introduction, kind of the to-do. These are kind of the things that are happening this week. Meet your new classmates, and I'll tell you, where you can find that. It says under the links tab on the right side of the page. So I know under the links tab, I can go meet my class who's in this course right now. It should just bring up the, no, they don't have it right. I'll have to talk to Nathalia, our online person. This is the previous course. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that won't help you.
No.
All right. Well,
I couldn't find it.
No, I can see that's a problem. Okay.
Yes.
Well, they're kind of working out some of the bugs. You always have this the first week. Okay. But anyway, I mentioned the critical thinking article. You can find that there under the links. Asking essential questions. They're just kind of a good little couple-page summary of some good things from this book that I thought were very helpful. That's under links because it's a website. There's also files. How to read a research article. That's the other one that I mentioned that's on here. And again, you'll find that under the files area. What we'll be doing is we'll get into week 2. Week 1, let's go back to week 1 a second. The discussion for week 1 is all built into this getting to know you. And so we've got, introducing ourselves in the class. What I'm asking is kind of a 2-part. The first part of this discussion is kind of introduction. The second part is really questions we just want to ask you to think about. You're going to read a section in the Merriam book this week that will talk about theoretical conceptual frameworks. And Dr. Henry's going to talk about that just for a minute here too. But I want you to kind of look at that, try to understand that concept. It'll become more clear, I think, as you're working through it for the next couple of weeks. But just briefly describe your beginning understanding of a theoretical conceptual framework and why do you think it's important? And then, so the way we always go through these discussion boards, these will come up by, actually, a course will open on a Sunday. Now, the first week, of course, we don't usually open till Monday, but the course usually opens by Sunday of the beginning of the week. So you can get to the discussion boards, you can see what's going on there. You'll have a question and you can, give your comment. And so we'd like people to make their comments by Thursday of the week so that other students can then read your comments and can respond. And then we'd like you to respond to 2 other students by the end of the week, by Saturday. So that's pretty much will be the protocol that we'll go through for every discussion board. There will be a discussion question, and maybe 2 questions. You would give your initial response, and then others will give their initial response, and then each student needs to respond to at least 2 other students, and that kind of keeps that discussion going through that discussion week. If Dr. Henry or I see comments there that we'd like to respond to, then we may respond also on that discussion board. So you'll have those kind of discussion boards going on. It's the getting to know you this week. Next week, it'll start with, week 2. You'll have one discussion board that everybody will be a part of.
Yes.
I'm having our online team work on this. I don't think they've gotten that done for us yet. But let's see, if we go to week 2, what I'm hoping is they'll be able to get our discussion board right there. In the past, we've had several discussion groups, so you've had to go into an intermediary page.
Okay.
We're not going to do that this time, I hope, because we don't need 3 groups. But let me just go back.
Yes.
I'm just kind of looking at this myself just to see what they've done at this point. So you don't need to be too aware, too concerned about all these issues I'm looking at right now. Again, I'm so hoping that we'll just get our discussion forums right there under this discussion tab. So, all right, I think that's about all I need to say.
Okay.
So, Dr. Henry, why don't you go ahead and make some comments on theoretical frameworks and evaluating sources. That would be very helpful for us.
Okay, I'll start with the evaluating of sources, and Noel will read the article online, which really, the title of that article is How to Read a Research Article. And in the reading of the research article, you will be doing some evaluation of the article in terms of its relevance to whatever topic you intend to research, to pursue.
Okay.
What I would say is that on a general format, first of all, because you're looking at research and you're proposing to do your own research, the first thing is that you need to read what we call original research. And I think Noel is quite familiar with that concept. But the idea of reading the original research is to make sure that you get first-hand information in terms of your knowledge and understanding of the issue or issues that you will address, and that you get it from somebody who has studied it himself or herself. And the reason why we emphasize original is that, yes, you will read, other writers will take the research and interpret it and use it in their writing. However, it's always better to go to the original so that you are clear in terms of your understanding of the concepts, the theoretical framework, the methodology of the study, because you will use that information to help to guide you in terms of proposing your own research. The other thing, the other important aspect of original research is that you are reading research that has been validated by the writer's peers. They're usually called peer-reviewed research. So it's important that you practice that. I do have a handout which one? Okay, this is the how to read a research article. I think I have another handout in that area. But you want to look at and generally if you use the library and you use the sources from the library, then you know that you are most likely reading original research, whether it's a thesis, a dissertation, or for example, if you use the Google Scholar, then you will be definitely looking at original research. One of the things about I usually say that reading research and preparing to write your dissertation, you have to do what I call detective work. One of the ways in which you do your detective work is to look at the references of the original research that you have read, the sources, because then you can use those sources yourself, read them to help you to fine-tune your thinking about the research that you propose to look at. As you read, you pay attention to the review of literature. And I just want to mention in passing that it is recommended that you want to use the latest research, so that if the research you're looking at is 10 years old, you want to be a little careful. But I say that with the caveat that in every field, there are classic resources that you will use. So, for example, I am working with a student who is looking at self-esteem, and one of the classic writers in that area is Cooper Smith. Now, his work is very old, but it's valid because he has developed a measure of self-esteem that student is going to be using in our proposed research. So I'm just saying that to say that yes, you want to pay attention to the date, but you also want to be aware of what are the classic pieces in the field in which you are studying, because there will be older documents that we would recognize as valid to what you are proposing to do. The research question, you look at the review of literature, look at what was done, who were the scholars, what were the peer-reviewed journals that they used, because the goal of the literature review is to provide the reader with what we call an integrative summary of other research findings. So that is basically when you look at the review of literature, you're looking at what other people have studied along in that area of interest that you have, what they have studied and what have been their findings, etc. Also, you want to pay attention to the research question. What were the guiding questions of the study that you're now looking at? How do those questions stack up against the questions of interest that you have? You want to be able to do that. If it's a qualitative piece of, if it's a quantitative study, you want to look at the population and the sample of the study. You want to look at how they were selected. That's important, and so forth. Now, as I said, the article is online, so you will be able to read it. But just to highlight the key concepts within that article.
Okay.
Moving on to the issue of the theoretical and the conceptual framework, and they are related and separate. I'd like to ask Noel some questions about what he is proposing to do, because I'm going to use that to illustrate what I mean by the conceptual framework and the theoretical framework. So go ahead, Noel, tell us what you are proposing to look at, to study.
Okay. I am proposing to look at teenage pregnancy, and I want to look at its implication on a particular age group, 16. I want to look at those implications as it affects the family, church, the community, and I also want to involve, because I don't think there is any research that looked at the male response to this pregnancy, how the male person feels. And note, I'm not saying the age group for the male, because we know there are different age groups. The impact of that person. So in a nutshell, it seeks to address teenage pregnancy, affecting girls between 12, impacting girls between 12 to 16, the impact on families, the church, the community, and the inclusion of the male in all of what these impacts are. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
You are. Okay. You are, and as usually happens, which is normal, what you're proposing to do right now is very broad. So, and this is where we start to look at theory and concepts to help us to narrow in our focus in terms of what we want to study. Now, you mentioned the impact of teenage pregnancy on families, church, community, male. That's 4 different groups. Okay.
Okay.
And so my next question is, why do you want to look at impact? There are several. When we think of teenage pregnancy, we could think of several issues that are related to teenage pregnancy. I notice you have narrowed the focus, which is fine, on impact on families. Okay, let's just talk about. So why do you want to look at the impact of teenage pregnancy on families?
Okay. The reason for looking at it on family, from a family standpoint, is based on my believer's persuasion. And we understand that families are in congregations, and we understand that within the same congregation, some of these very teenagers are getting pregnant. The reaction of the family, the family may withdraw that girl from church. The family may send the girl away from their home, so that's another impact. The girl who the family may have quite a lot of enterprising goodies for her to be a doctor, a lawyer, and what have you. At age 16, 15, 14, when they should be in the prime of doing the subject area that will transfer them to. This pregnancy would have interrupted it. So the girl herself is in the family too. And also the slant of the male, which is also in the family, is a kind of silent thing that I observe. And nobody talks about the male. And even when a girl is pregnant in church, we're not even told anything about the male. We just deal with the girl and the girl only. So she becomes a victim. She becomes traumatized. She becomes everything. And she don't understand what decision to make. So within that family, if the family is not resilient enough, if the family is not understanding enough, we can lose that child. And in Guyana, we have a high rate of suicide. And some of them, when they can't balance themselves, they go to suicide.
Okay. Oh, you've brought in some other things here. Now, if you've been looking at the screen, Dr. Payne has been putting up some research articles that address the issue of teenage pregnancy. This first one looks at the association between adverse childhood experiences and adolescent pregnancy, long-term psychosocial consequences.
Yeah.
This one talks about consequences of adolescent pregnancy / parenting. Those are two issues.
Yeah.
Now,
from a medical,
one of the foundational challenges in terms of identifying your research interests is to ask questions that get behind the issue, I say, in terms of, and here we look at the issue of theory and concepts.
Yeah.
What are the theories associated with teenage pregnancy? You talked about rejection of the girl. You talked about victimization of the girl. You talk about the silence concerning the male participant of the pregnancy.
Yeah.
Those are some theoretical issues underlying teenage pregnancy. I don't know if Bill wants to jump in here.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting just to kind of use Google Scholar here. I think as Dr. Henry said, you say we start out with a broad concept, teen pregnancy. Okay, and then at least when I'm working with somebody on a problem statement, they may start a problem statement, for example, with a broad concept, but then you keep narrowing the focus down to the particular aspect of teen pregnancy that you want to address within this specific dissertation. You obviously, you cannot address the whole topic of teen pregnancy in one dissertation because there's just too many aspects of it.
Yeah.
So, you need to, as Dr. Henry is taking the process right now, think about the specific aspects of teen pregnancy that you want to address. And you just mentioned a few: rejection of the girl, victimization. How is the male in that role? Why is sometimes there's just a silence about that issue? You'd want to pick a few specific aspects of the teen pregnancy issue that you want to deal with. Okay, and so I think that's kind of the process that you're going through right now. So let you keep going through that process with him, Dr. Henry.
And so I just use that to introduce the whole issue of the conceptual framework, because what underlies research is the ability to identify the key concepts and the variables that you are going to study. What is the relationship among them? For example, going back to your interest in teenage pregnancy, we may, looking at what other researchers have done, it may be that we come up with a recognition that there is some relationship going to the family between teenage pregnancy and the kind of family background from which the pregnant teen comes from, the family type, there may be some relationship, may or may not be. The research will show us if there is. But your conceptual framework is that which helps you to explain or to predict an event. So what are the cultural, the values, the social predictors of teenage pregnancy? What are the social, cultural values predictors of teenage pregnancy? What events predict teenage pregnancy?
Okay.
What kind of family situation may predict female teenage pregnancy? Sorry.
Teenage pregnancy. Yes.
Right. So your conceptual framework also gives you a reason for your research study.
Yeah.
It undergirds the study. It helps you in understanding of how the research problem will be explored, what specific direction research will have to take. Your conceptual framework is usually presented by your research questions. Sorry. So, and here I throw it out to you, Noel. What are some of the underlying questions that you would like to raise with respect to teenage pregnancy?
The first question I would like to look at is the whole question of how what drives or what motivates the teen into getting pregnant in the first place. And the reason yes, what motivates, because we don't actually know whether it's a motivation, whether it's under pressure, but we know that there is some factor that is pushing them to that point where they can get pregnant. And there are several anecdotal things that we can put in the area. In terms of the old fantasy of peer pressure that says, I've done it, you should do it. The old fantasy of saying you are of age. Those are some of the aspects. The other aspect has to do with family disruption.
If you don't mind. I think what you're probably saying, and this is where conceptualizing comes in, what are the preconditions?
Yeah.
What are the preconditions that lead to teenage pregnancy? I don't think the word is motivation. The concept is motivation. Though I understand what you're saying when you use the word motivation, but I think it's more what are the
preconditions?
Yeah, definitely preconditions that give rise. Yeah. That's what I want to say. What are the preconditions that give rise to teenage pregnancy? Because the other thing about research is that you want to get to the root cause. You want to separate out the symptom from the, not a good word to use in respect, but you understand what I'm saying, from the disease. So I want to propose that teenage pregnancy is a symptom of something else.
Yes.
So, and if you're going to do a good research, you want to get to the root cause.
Yeah.
So, what are the preconditions? You may want to look at values.
Yeah. And I think the aspect of values, because I am not sure, because we see pregnancy even in homes where they are leaders of church, pastors and whatever, teenage pregnancy. Mm-hmm. So, but we can still look at values because it's key.
Yes.
Each person will view it as a different something. Their value set is different, and so it's key to look at the whole value aspect of it. I'm just playing around with it because
Mm-hmm.
it's important.
Yeah, as I'm kind of playing with Google Scholar here, I'm just trying to take keywords.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're working in what you're doing right now, you're kind of wrestling with, say, a theoretical framework.
Mm-hmm.
And I just looking at, we use the word causes, we use the word precondition, we just now use the word values. Before we used like rejection, ostracism, being ostracized. Those are all concepts that you can enter into a program like Google Scholar, and you can start to get various articles that are going to address that issue. But basically, the theoretical framework from this in terms of this issue that we're dealing with, teen pregnancy, is looking various. It's almost like various subtopics to teen pregnancy that you're needing to look at specifically to address what you want to address in this particular patient.
Mm-hmm.
So I think theoretical framework and keywords, those are fairly close, I think, because you can use each of those theoretical concept keywords, ostracization, causes, precondition. You can experiment with those various kinds of words and then say use a database like this and see what kinds of sources you come up with. And so, and then, in your literature review, you're going to deal with those various concepts. You may have a section on causes, teen pregnancy causes, or preconditions, whatever term you want to use. Mm-hmm. That's a theoretical look at this issue of teen concept. You may have a section on it's hard for me to say, but being ostracized, that concept, it's a concept. How does that happen? Does that happen? Values. You may, as I was looking at here, I saw there was one article on teen pregnancy in 5 different countries. It was going to look at the value structures of those countries and see if there was any correlation between some of those value structures and the rate of teen pregnancy. So so now we're looking at a theoretical concept, values. Okay, and then we're going to say, okay, how does values seem to fit? And I can look at articles to get understanding of that. So now, as you're thinking about, teen pregnancy, think of a few key words, and those key words are, I would imagine, going to be the components of your theoretical framework. Would that be a good way to say that, Dr. Henry?
Yes, and at the same time, you also want to read the literature to help you to formulate what you are going to study. What is the literature saying about the symptoms, the causes, the consequences of teenage pregnancy? What is the literature saying about what predisposes individuals towards teenage pregnancy? So you want to you go in with some questions of your own, but you also want to allow the current research to speak to you in terms of helping you to fine-tune your own interest.
Yeah, my own thoughts about the whole business is about this girl. I don't have much. Guyana, they've just done a research looking at. We have in Guyana 6 ethnic groups. 6 ethnic groups. We have our Aboriginal people that we call Amerindians, as against East Indians, Chinese, Europeans, Africans. So we make up 6 races. And they had just done a study between the interland area where our Amerindian brothers and sisters are found, as against the rural urban areas in terms of teen pregnancy.
Yes.
And they're saying that it is more in those communities as against outside, because the population there is much smaller. Total population is 750,000.
Yes.
And in the interior area, riverine area, it's much smaller population.
Okay.
But the values set within those areas are some challenges. Incest, not only father and daughters, but mothers and sons. And then we have brothers and sisters, and pregnancy are taking place. So they see it as a real problem. My own about the whole thing, outside from my biblical persuasion, is what becomes of this girl. And I've seen it, many of them. I don't have the evidence of it, but I know I see a lot of them in the village where I live. They're pregnant, and that is like if the end of them. Yes. They no longer study, school doesn't mean anything. They're grappling with this baby, no baby father to attend. The mother get disgusted with them, and so they are practically not doing anything for themselves. They just live day by day. Yeah. So I am hoping that I can have something developed, that I can have either speeches at different groups, talking through maybe a Ministry of Education, Health and Life, using that platform to talk to children. So we're not waiting until they reach teen. We're not waiting until teen or adolescent. We're gonna talk long before. So that's how I'm broad thinking. That's how I'm thinking.
One of the other issues I want to just bring up. One of the criteria I know in our oral reviews, and we're starting to put this as a criteria for our dissertations, is that the literature you look at, we'd like to at least a good part of your literature is really contextualized to your particular area. Now you're in Guyana.
Yeah.
So I was kind of just putting teen pregnancy Guyana to see what really comes up here. So you want to also make sure that you're thinking through your literature and your sources, that you're looking specifically at authors that are talking about the situation in Guyana. So that's another way that you're going to narrow this teen pregnancy issues. You're specifically dealing with the context of Guyana and how the values, the environment, the whole situation that's there is contributing to any preconditions that are specific to that particular area.
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, that's good. We're just about out of time here. I really appreciate it's kind of helpful to me just to kind of wrestle through just having that on the screen. And as we just kind of go to a database, you can kind of see how you can do this yourself. You just start throwing in keywords, and as you're looking at keywords, and we're looking also at trying to contextualize it to Guyana, you're also wrestling with the theoretical framework for your dissertation. I also, for me, and when I talk about the theoretical framework now in the literature review chapter, we've got some of these issues. Say we've talked about, ostracization. We've talked about causes, values. Those could all be pieces of your conceptual framework.
Yeah.
From a Christian perspective, we're also going to bring any theological values, perspectives. Those also become a part of our theoretical framework. Okay.
Okay.
I think that's why in the last several months, we've tried to take what we call the theology chapter, which used to be a whole chapter in itself, and we've tried to integrate that into the literature/theoretical framework to show that this is part of the whole value foundation that you need to talk about in the context of a particular issue. Now we're talking about teen pregnancy. If there are some theological values, principles that you can find, they would also become part of your theoretical framework. Of course, then another aspect of the BGU is once you've gone through the research, you've gone through the theory, and you've looked at the concepts, you've tried to come to some conclusions. You've done that through empirical, you'll be doing you're doing book literature research. You'll be doing empirical research by talking to people. So we're looking at different ways to find data that's going to contribute to your understanding and some helpful, we call them intervention strategies, that can be applied in your particular situation. What this at BGU, a dissertation, a final project, the culmination of it needs to culminate in some kind of a strategy, intervention, something that you do that begins to address this problem in some practical way with the, with the environment where you're living. You might have a seminar, you may do a whole city consultation in an area, you may put together some small sensitivity groups. There's a lot of different ways that you could begin to interact with people, and then you just need to know, what parts of the population would you like to interact with in some kind of an intervention strategy. So yeah, and we'll talk more about that as we get through the course. But I'm just trying to get those pieces out as you're thinking through in some terms right now, where this process is going. I think that's about it for today.
Okay.
I don't think your brain can probably handle anymore either. So.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you being helping us. I'm glad you were here today anyway, Noel, and hopefully others will be able to gain as they look at this video that we've made.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
I didn't get you. You faded.
Good. Okay.
I didn't get you, Dr. Faded.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of static on the line right now. So.
Yeah.
Well, let's close down the session, and you can start working through the first week there, and bring in the discussions, and we'll be meeting you there online in the course course room, the classroom course room.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, doctors.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good to meet you. Okay. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye all for now. And
Okay,
Dr. Claire will meet on Wednesday if that fits your schedule.
Let me get back to you on that.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Let's do. We can figure that out by email.
Okay, sure.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Again, goodbye for now, Noel, and again,
Goodbye.
good to meet you online.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye
Yes.